Hello my splendid lot, it's Mega Gran here again with another episode of Vintage Story. Now then, there's a few things to catch up on that happened in between the two mining sessions that I showed you in the last episode. I wanted to keep them together, and one of them was my tree cutting had grown, which I found particularly exciting, so off I rushed to see if the other one had as well. But there was no sign of green leaves when I looked into the back garden. But this one I was really chuffed about. But I did then wonder, maybe the west side garden wasn't a good place for it. So I picked it up and relocated it. And I thought I would bring a little bit of symmetry to the other garden and plant it opposite to the other one I planted. And I just hoped that moving it wouldn't spoil its chances of successfully taking. We'd have to see about that, I suppose. But everything else was flourishing, as it often does at this time of year. And all the fruit bushes were coming to life, and some of them even had fruit on them. And next I needed to see what was happening with my animals. First I went to have a look at the chickens, and although they seemed to be doing okay, I did think that I might have to relocate this chicken coop. Because there were a lot of foxes around, and I had found them worrying the chickens once or twice, and I didn't like the idea of that. So I thought I might move it nearer to where the sheep were, and I was able to fill up the troughs quite well this time because my gardens had been doing quite well. The sheep, however, were not faring as well as the chickens. They were out of the pens, and I had no idea how they got there. And I just felt, well, this format wasn't working. I needed to have a rethink and see what else I could come up with. But for the time being, I needed to get them sorted. Thankfully, the ewes weren't quite as dangerous as the rams. But on first look, I couldn't find the ram anywhere, so I wasn't quite sure what had happened at all. The lamb had obviously grown up, and that might be why that was outside. It might have glitched through the fence. But I don't know how the mother got there, and I don't know why the ram should have disappeared. So I got to work, coaxed them back into the pen. And I thought I'd take the opportunity to replace the fencing so it was all uniform. And having filled up the troughs, the sheep were gravitating towards the food, so it wouldn't be long before I'd have the sheep back in their pens. I'd just popped out to get some more cobble, and when I came back in, there was the ram in the first pen. I'm not really sure how I missed that, but there he was, and there he could stay while I sorted out the other two. A two-high wall all the way around made perfect sense. So I got on with that. And eventually I got one of the ewes behind fencing. The other one was still roaming around, but I was quite sure I'd have the other one sorted once I'd got more fencing. And by the evening, they were all in their separate pens. I just had to figure out how to get them together every now and then, and how to sort them out every now and then. Because I knew if I kept on breeding them, successive generations would become more domesticated, and I wouldn't run the risk of being buttered when I needed to come in to do anything. So that was a must, and something I'd have to keep working on. Because I'd had success with that first cutting, I thought I might take a few more cuttings and plant them on that middle bit of island in between mine and Flooze's base. So I hacked away at the first sturdy branch that I could find. The other branches looked a bit dead, and I wasn't quite sure until I bashed them whether they were or not. But they were. But I did want to get another couple of cuttings. I did wonder whether the top of the tree could be chopped, and whether it would grow again after if I did chop it. But I had a go. And it did turn out that I could get 2 more cuttings from there, so I was quite chuffed about that. And still left the tree to grow again. Nice. I had been turning my rot into compost, and I thought I might use some of the compost to make some better quality dirt, and I might put that underneath the cuttings. I was thinking if they had better quality dirt, they might have a better chance of surviving. I wasn't quite sure though, but I thought it was worth a go. So I headed over to the little island and decided to plant all 3 cuttings on it, and then we'd see. And that was it. Hopefully they would all grow. Another thing I'd been doing was combining oil with bowls to make those little oil lamps, and I was putting them on the posts along my bridge. Now these little oil lamps don't make an awful lot of light, but they make enough light so that when you're across the lake you can look over to my bridge and you can see it, and it looks super cool. It was a little while later when I decided it was time to move my chicken coop. Mostly because I weren't getting any increase in chickens, and I thought that was because of the foxes. So I thought it was time, and I decided to utilise this bit of space just behind the chicken coop and attach it to the barn. I'd already made an open pen at the back with some food in the hope that boars would be attracted to it, but nothing was in. I made this the size of the existing one, except it was going to be a half circle instead of a full circle. I know the full circle was pretty, but it needed to be functional rather than pretty, really. And I think this would be functional. And I made it 2 blocks high because I didn't want the foxes to be able to look through the fencing and scare the chickens. But I did put some fence on top, and it was sort of like I needed the thought of air flowing through it. You know, to keep it fresh. Then I moved the chickens across because I wanted to use the slabs in the existing roof to make the new roof. So I placed some grains in troughs and made a run which directed them into the new place. I didn't think it was going to be a trial, and I didn't rush them. I just concentrated on removing the slabs in the roof and just hoped they'd go in by themselves. Well, it almost worked. They sort of fluttered around the run that I made, and then when I walked up, in they went. So I sealed up the wall, got rid of the run, and then I could get the rest of the fencing down. And then the roof went on, and I just made an outline and then filled it in. And just like the other one, I went up half a slab with each rotation. I quite like roofs like this because they're not too steep and it doesn't take a lot of wood. And I was hoping that they'd settle down quite quickly. Well, they looked all right to me. I think they were enjoying their new environment. So the next thing to think about would be what to do with this. It didn't take me long though. I thought I might do another aviary. And that didn't take me long either, because I'd done one before, so I knew exactly what I was doing. It's amazing how quickly time goes when you know what you're doing and you just get on with it. Quite enjoyed that. All that, actually. It was coming along. Storage is always a problem, and it wasn't long before I was thinking about a big trunk. 36 slots. What would that look like? It was just 2 chests put side by side in your inventory, and there was a wooden trunk. I had to think where to put it though. And I thought near the door, because coming in with an inventory full, you just wanted to dump it in something, didn't you? So I decided I could relocate the storage vessel and the basket near the door, so that if I came in with an inventory full, I could just put it all in there and then decide where I was going to put it all. Only my inventory was already full, so I hoped when I broke this basket and placed the chest, I could get everything else back. It's a bit dicey because it might not have happened, but whoa, look at that storage space. A trunk was definitely the way to go. It was a few real life days before I got back on the server again, but people had been super busy and it was already the 21st of September. My vegetables were all grown in the garden, some of my fruit trees had prospered, and I had rot everywhere. But at least I could make more compost. And choosing what food to eat was simple, whichever was going to rot first. And first in my inventory went cabbage and turnip stew. Yummy. And the rot that I'd put in the barrels when I last was on had already made compost. So I could either put that on my garden or I could make some high fertility soil. Nice. I needed to find out what other things we could put on the soil to increase fertility as well. I'd already got some saltpetre. And it was dead of night when I came on, of course. and I was sad to see that I'd missed all the fruit on the trees. But I could do a massive harvest of all my veggies because they were all grown. But I did need my scythe. I couldn't do without my scythe now I'd started using one. It enabled you to harvest things super fast. And I had to do a double take of my pumpkins, there were so many. But I had used high fertility soil with them. So, spelt first. I did wonder why that one hadn't grown as fast as the others, but maybe it was the soil. And then the flax. Flax was so useful because of the flax fibres it gave you. And then the turnips. And the more you harvested, the more seeds you got as well. I was much more careful on where I planted them as well, depending on the soil and whether it had adequate nutrients like nitrogen, phosphate or potassium. I didn't often get 100% growth speeds, but they seemed to grow alright for me. I had added more water to my gardens as well, so that most of the soil blocks were next to water. Not all of them, but most of them. And that helped. And I've been using the quern to ground down bones so I could get bone meal and put that on the soil for the pumpkins. And I think that's why I've got so many. It was really good. And then I just used a couple of pumpkins to make pumpkin seeds to replace them. So it was okay if you got more pumpkins than you planted, because you could just build them up. Round the back I had planted onions. I was still sad that I'd missed my apples on my tree. And I'd also got soya beans round here as well. And soya beans, if you could get hold of them, were fab because they lasted an awful long time in storage and they filled up your hunger bar really well when you used them in cooking. There had been a lot of grass in here though, I needed to be careful on that. Cabbage was another good vegetable to grow as well. It filled up your hunger bar really well when you used it in recipes, but I found that it was quite poor in reproducing its seeds. The fruit bushes were still producing though, but they were quite poor to store, so they did rot quite quickly. But you could make jam to preserve them, and you could make fruit pie. I'm not quite sure how long fruit pie stores for, because I hadn't made any yet. And there was also the possibility of brewing alcohol. But we'll have a look at that in a later episode. But currently it was adding to the compost pile. It wasn't too bad really. Only one of the cuttings had taken over on that little island, so I don't think planting them on the high fertility soil made any difference whatsoever. And I looked around my garden very frequently to remove grass because rabbits spawned on grass, and if you got rabbits spawning in your veggie patch, they would nibble on your veggies. It was now October. All the leaves on the trees were changing colour. There were lots of reds and yellows and rustic browns, and my rabbit trap had an abundance of rabbits in it. Time was flying, and we were nearing another winter. But I was eager to see how my chickens were doing. Had they reproduced? And they had! And there were lots of eggs. I was quite chuffed about that. I'm glad I changed things. So the foxes weren't worrying them anymore. And they quite liked their little hen house. They felt quite safe. And I think that's why they were reproducing. And I was able to get a dozen eggs on that occasion. And I was really chuffed about that too. Now I'd reorganised the barn a little bit. And in one pen I had a young ewe who had had another lamb. And then in the other pen I'd had a little lamb that had grown up to be another ram. And everything seemed to be in order. And all the animals were where they were supposed to be. No more escapees and no more intermingling. So I just kept topping up the food and keeping an eye on them. And accumulating rot for the compost barrels. This little lamb over here was a generation 2. So I wanted to keep that one, and I hoped it would grow into a generation 2 ram. Now don't look, because I need to get rid of this one. I don't want 2 rams in there, I'd rather have 2 ewes in there. But unfortunately, this one turned out to be male, so he had to go. Under normal circumstances, I would have named this and petted him every day and hoped that he would live a long and happy life. But this is a harsh world. And we have to eat. I was lucky he died in the corner, really, because I could go outside and harvest his bits and bats from his carcass right near the wall. Oh dear. I did need to get some piggies next, because rams, although they did give you a good amount of meat, they usually only gave you one fat. And fat is quite a useful resource in this game. And piggies usually give you 2 fat, so they're much better in terms of resource gathering. So I do need to get some piggies. And once I'd satisfied myself with my chickens and my sheep, I turned my attention to the extras in the rabbit trap. There were a lot of them, and they were of a good weight, so I got 2 meat from each of them. I regularly made charcoal, because I had quite a bit of copper, and copper tools didn't last very long, so I was always using charcoal. I really needed to go to the next level of smithing. So between what I got from the sheep and all those rabbits in the rabbit trap, I needed to do quite a bit of cooking. And I could store quite a few as well. And my winter storeroom was filling up nicely. A little while later, I went on a little trip with Ore, and I saw my first translocator. Oh, I can hear things growling.
Can you grab my lantern?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Ooh. Hang on. There you go.
Thanks.
Oh, this is
So
this is a thingy.
Yep.
So what did you do to get it working?
You need 3. You need the 2 metal parts, and you need 3 temporal gears.
Oh. So do I just step on it then?
Yep.
Oh dear. Oh, whoa. Oh! Wow! What's all that? Oh, are you putting that up there?
Yeah.
So this teleporter came here to all this copper?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
If you open up your map, you'll see
Yeah.
just how you'll have to drag your map pretty far.
Oh, wow.
Down and right. You'll have to drag your map pretty far to find us.
Down and...
Find where home
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a long way away. Once I'd mined all the copper, we headed straight back, because the temporal stability was very poor here. And my wheel was spinning backwards as fast as it did during a temporal storm. But it didn't take long before it was going slowly forwards. That was a relief. I don't think you can move translocators either. That would have been very useful. So we started on the trek home and mined any iron we found along the way.
Right here.
Oh, nice. So we've got to dig down from here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're quicker than I am. Well, you've probably got a shovel. I'm doing it with my pick. I didn't bring a shovel. What am I lying? Oh, well, we need a pick now anyway, don't we?
So do you want to grab the bit that you're standing on there?
Yeah. And by creating a spiral staircase, using just 4 blocks, it wasn't long before we found the copper.
Oh. Is this the one I had marked?
Oh, I don't know.
No, this isn't one I had marked.
Oh, so this is another one.
Yep.
Oh, there it is.
Gonna go AFK for a moment.
Are you down the hole?
Yeah.
Oh, right, that's okay. And it wasn't that long before I was in my tiny, teeny, tiny cellar, trying to manage all my copper. I really, really needed to expand my cellar. And I had more than enough for extra supplies. There you go. Oh! Oh, you cheeky thing! Oh! I nearly hit you with me. There's some goodies in your mailbox, Maddie. I'm going. I'm going back.
Oh, wow. I'm glad I made this mailbox.
By now, it was November, and ice was beginning to appear around the lakes and the ponds. And Maddie had kept her eye out for some piggies, and she'd managed to trap some in a hole for me. There was a boar and 2 sows. Perfect. So we got started moving them. We had a long way to go to get these piggies into my piggy pen. So armed with as many fences as I had spare, we started making a run for them, just leaving 1 block wide in the middle, filling in as many holes as we could along the way. It was going to take us quite a while. We were using a trough full of food at the end of the run to lure the piggies in the direction of their piggy pen. So how long it would take would be determined by how quickly the piggies could get to the trough. By the end of the first day, they'd made it about 12 blocks. So it was going to be a long haul, and we blocked their escape and moved the fences from behind to in front. And we just washed, rinsed and repeat. But it was going to take a few days. In the meantime, Maddie helped further with her specialist skills. Hello.
Hello.
Right, let me just chuck all these things at you. There you go.
Good Lord. There is so much flax. You haven't made anything, have you?
No.
Oh my goodness. Well, Gran's going to be clothing us this winter. Okay. Give me your clothes that are tattered.
Right then.
Your shoes, your jacket, your gloves, your pants.
Knee-high boots, my gloves. What's this? These are rawhide trousers I've got.
Yep, all of it.
All of it. Okay then. So I've got knee-high fur boots now. I've got rawhide trousers. I've got a fur coat, a chateau blouse, a malefactor heavy cloak, and then the headscarf, and then some fur gloves, and then something I don't seem to be able to put back is the malefactor leather tunic.
That would take the place of your shirt, I believe, because a tunic is a type of shirt.
Oh, right.
Yeah, tunic. Yeah, coat takes place of the tunic.
Right. And I was fully kitted out for the winter, which was approaching fast, and which was very helpful, getting our piggies across that little pond. They still didn't come any faster, but they were coming, nonetheless, and the end goal was in sight. It was mid-November when I put the last turnips in the last trough, and the piggies were very near to their new home. So that's about it for this episode. In the next episode, I expand my cellar, I make a little windmill, we follow Ore's experiences with alcohol, and we head south for the winter. So take care everybody, and I'll see you next week in the next episode. Bye bye.